Hi all, happy Monday. Welcome to the Wife of Caesar. My name is Michel Levien, or Michel Levien, either's fine. And well, welcome as always. As you know, the Wife of Caesar is Streiner's project to talk about corruption or to talk about anti-corruption, using day-to-day words, using everyday language, so that we can all fight corruption in our daily lives with a little bit more than just good intentions. Okay, as in every episode, we will have a piece of news, a case, and we will also discuss a typology. In the piece of news, we will talk about relevant current events that are related to corruption or to anti-corruption. When we talk about the case, we will talk about old or new cases, but that are somehow related to anti-corruption and to the point that we're trying to illustrate. And when we talk about the typology, we will tell you about the specific ways in which you can commit bribery. Okay, awesome. So let's talk about the news. The news this week deals with the survey that the president of Mexico proposes to decide whether or not to prosecute former presidents for acts of corruption.
You heard it right.
President Lopez Obrador has been, well, since he took office, really, he has been known to delegate very important, very politically sensitive decisions to the public via surveys, referendums, depending on how you look at them. The reality of it is, whenever he faces a decision that might be tough, he delegates that decision to the public, and he can then claim that the people made that decision. Okay, now this time it gets weird. No, it's always weird. This time it gets more interesting. Now, in this case, he has said in several occasions, but this week he yet again said that he is willing to hold a survey to have the people decide whether or not the federal government should prosecute former presidents of Mexico, former federal presidents, for acts of corruption. Now, this all may sound positive, but it's actually quite somber, and I'll explain to you why. The Constitution, our supreme law, mandates that the executive power, specifically via the Attorney General, has the obligation to prosecute all crimes known to it. Now, this means that if the president has an idea, or if the executive power in any branch, in any agency, has knowledge that crimes have been corrupted, he or she has the obligation to prosecute them. So why then would he delegate that decision or that power to the people via a simple survey? Well, our job is to point out the facts and help you decide whether or not we're looking at corruption. We've talked about the various types of corruption, political corruption, petty corruption, grand corruption, facilitation payments, all of that. Now, we also talked about political corruption, and let me just remind you that political corruption is the manipulation of public policy, public institution, or procedural rules, so essentially the rules of the game, by political actors with the purpose of, preserving for themselves wealth, power, or status. In this particular case, the questions that we need to ask ourselves: is the president, by delegating his mandatory powers to the people via, a simple survey, is he committing an improper act? Is there an improper delegation of the decision making? If so, is any improper benefit generated? Specifically, is the benefit of preserving status or power generated? If so, then you have to ask yourself, is this the kind of person, is this the kind of government that we want to have? A government that is willing to commit wanton political corruption. All right, let's move on to the case. Today we have Kinross Gold Corporation. Okay, Kinross is a Canadian mining company, but it also trades in the New York Stock Exchange. And Kinross has been accused of an offense known as lack of implementation of internal controls. Let me explain. Corruption, very broadly, corruption in the US, or at least in US laws, is regulated by the FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Okay, this law provides for three different offenses, or three different major crimes of corruption. Number one is actually going out of the country and paying bribes. Great.
No, well, not great, but clear enough.
Number two is the offense of, we call it books and records violations. So essentially cooking your books so as to hide corruption. And number three is failure to implement internal controls. That means that your company is not doing enough to prevent corruption internally. Okay, so the FCPA is applied by several different authorities, and one of these authorities is the Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC. It's just the government agency in charge of regulating securities markets, stock markets. All right, so in 2010, I gave you a little bit of the legal background. Now let me give you a little bit of the historical background. In 2010, Kinross decided to acquire a few African subsidiaries in the countries of Mauritania and Ghana, and it paid around $7 billion for the subsidiaries. Now, according to the FCPA and to the provisions, to the text of the FCPA concerning internal controls, whenever a company this big buys a subsidiary or acquires any other company, the company needs to make sure that the new company, the company that they are buying, has proper compliance and proper internal controls. In this case, this is what Kinross failed to do, and it turned out that the new subsidiaries had been doing business with companies that were related to political actors in both African countries, and they were involved in suspicious activity. Now, is suspicious activity enough to convict someone of bribery? No, but it is enough to find that a company violated the internal controls provision, because if you don't have enough or sufficient internal controls in your company to prevent the possibility of bribery, then you're violating the law. Okay, the SEC in this particular case found that there was a high probability that improper conduct had taken place in Africa with the new subsidiaries, and that was enough for it to issue what we know as a cease and desist order, which is an official document, an official government order. And this document ordered Kinross, or compelled Kinross, to pay a fine of $950,000. Kinross had the benefit of not having to admit to wrongdoing, which is actually, reputationally, it's actually a very nice perk. However, once a year, Kinross has to report, to do periodic reporting with the SEC to prove that it's doing well in its internal provisions. Now, the moral of the story is that even though no crime is actually proven, the mere possibility of a crime might by itself be a violation of anti-corruption law. So we have to, be very, very careful to even avoid the appearance of impropriety. Okay, so let's move on to the typology. Now, today's typology is not my own. I very blatantly stole it from Alexandra Raghi of Trace International. Alexandra Raghi, she's the CEO, the president of Trace International, which is a company that specializes in anti-corruption and anti-bribery compliance broadly, and they do an excellent job. They also happen to have a podcast known as Bribe, Swindle, or Steal. Do check it out. You can find it on most major platforms. It's a great podcast. And listening to it very recently, I learned about this new typology, which we will call casinos. Okay, in this typology, what happens is a company invites a public official to a jurisdiction where gambling is legal, is allowed. The company insists that the official pay her own expenses. It provides very little or very basic amenities, only simple meals, so there's no luxury involved. They keep up with appearances at all times. And the pretext for the travel is a demonstration of a product, a purported demonstration of a product. Now, the demonstration takes place. It's generally an austere and very basic demonstration, just a very simple show of a specific product or of a specific service, and the demonstration concludes. All right, now, what happens later is what's interesting. Everything up to this point seems to be on the up and up, seems to be fairly transparent. But once the demonstration has concluded, the official, in her own time, but still in the foreign jurisdiction that allows gambling, decides to go out to a casino. Now, in this casino, the company has already taken the precaution of paying off a gambler or a dealer to lose vast amounts of money to the public official. And that way, well, first of all, that's bribery number one, paying off someone to lose. It's fraud. And the official then makes a large sum of money, which apparently seems legitimate. That's bribe number two. The advantages, if one were so inclined, the advantages of this typology is that the money appears legitimate, the money is pre-laundered, it already is inserted into the financial system, and the official is free to use it. And what's even more appalling is that the official can even pay taxes on this bribe because it appears to be legitimate income. And obviously, after that, the company receives the improper benefit. Now, I know we're never supposed to praise the corrupt, but we have to admit this is a very creative way of committing acts of corruption. But the good thing is that if I can learn about it, if you can learn about it on YouTube, then the proper authorities already know about it, so it's easier to detect. So it poses relatively little risk.
But still, kudos to the person that came up with this.
Okay, so that was it for today. Thank you for being with us at The Wife of Caesar. Again, my name is Michel Levien or Michel Levien. Either is fine. I will leave you, as always, with this. All acts of corruption have to be reported. Please blow the whistle, but do it safely. Stay safe. If you don't know whether or not what you're looking at is corruption, or if you don't know for sure that you are absolutely safe, don't blow the whistle. Stay safe. Reach out to people who can help you. If you'd like, you can reach out to us at info@streiner.mx and we will be glad to help you. But above all, please stay safe. Okay, so have a happy Monday. Thank you for joining us and goodbye.